Hello, my name is Mark Jimenez, and I have started a video series on this administration's claims, which are not true. At least the most important lies of the month is under American Moderate News, and you can find them on YouTube. But this video is not really so much about news as it is a request for moderate Democrats, independents, and even moderate Republicans to do two things. One, don't give up on Trump supporters. It can be frustrating, but the fact is that they're good people, they're hardworking, they want to make America great again. And what's wrong with that? Of course, the problem is that they're trusting a guy that's destroying the opportunity for America to be great again. And the second request is related to the first. The reason they are falling for it is because there's a vacuum in the Democratic Party and independents, and even moderate Republicans with some rare exceptions like John Kasich and Jeff Flake, to challenge those lies. So what we need to do is call him out on every lie and point out things to people so that his lies don't spread. Trump may not know how to spell Marine Corps, but he absolutely understands how to deliver a message. And he is spending a fortune on Facebook. He's got his own news channel, which is basically state propaganda, his state, Trump propaganda. And Hannity is a huge supporter. Every single day, no matter what the president drops the ball on, he comes up with some justification. In fact, the reason I started this video series is because I watched his reporting on the FBI's investigation, and it was so outrageous and shameful and filled with lies that I felt if somebody didn't know better, they were very, very persuasive. But those are the two requests. And why does this matter? Because if you feel that Trump is going to stop here and basically says, hey, if he gets rid of Mueller and all this, that's it, he's fine, everything's going to go back to normal, and eventually we'll get rid of him, and even if he serves 4 or 8 years, eventually he'll be gone, so how bad can it be? That is also not true. Trump is pulling us lower. Every time he pulls us lower, we kind of surrender to it, we give up, throw our hands up in the air and say, okay, this is, well, I guess we got to put up with this guy. He pulls us lower still. And then we go through this process all over again and surrender to that, and he pulls us lower. This is going to keep happening. Trump has strong totalitarian leanings, and that's not good for our democracy. Some of the claims he's making are ridiculous and irrelevant. The crowd size is really not important. When he claims things that are absolutely false, like NAFTA was not good for the United States, it may seem like it's not a big deal, and anyone that knows better knows that's just not true. NAFTA was very good for America, incredibly good for America. But if you're one of his supporters, one of his followers, you're thinking, well, the previous establishment didn't take care of me, and Trump is trying to make America great again. Well, that's what he's telling you, but that's not true. NAFTA was great for the United States. It improved productivity, and yes, it's true that some jobs were lost. But saying that, but we created many more jobs than we lost, and they were better jobs, the jobs of the future. Saying that NAFTA was bad for the United States is like saying that technology was bad for the United States because it cost some jobs. Some people at registers don't have jobs as much, or middle management got replaced by some sophisticated software. Technology is very good for America and the world, and we should embrace it. NAFTA was very good for America and the world, and we should embrace it. The problem, and that seems to be obvious to us and we just dismiss it, but the problem is that Trump is saying this to his base, and it makes them more dependent on him because they believe it's true. It's not true. But if you believe that it is, then you're going to be more dependent on him, and that's what he's creating. If you take a look, his followers don't even care what he says is true or not, if what he says is true or not. All they care about is, does this media report support Trump or oppose Trump? Because if it's opposing Trump, they're against it. And that's what happens when you buy into something that's just not true. He's convinced people that no one cares about him except him. And no one else knows how to do things as good as him. Everybody else made dumb deals until he showed up. The truth is that he's lying. And I understand fully why he would file bankruptcy so many times with his little ideas. But right now, it's very tempting to fall into his trap. Why? Because the economy is doing well. And Trump is claiming victory and he's saying that's great. That's just not true. All we're doing is having an economy that had $1.5 trillion in debt poured on it. And if you think that's good, think about it this way. If you pull out your credit card out of your wallet and you walk over to the ATM and pull out $1,000 a month, then you go to the store and you're spending that money buying a fishing pole or some shoes or something else you want, it feels pretty good. But is it? It's not. What you're creating is not wealth. You're creating debt. And that's what Trump's doing to the country. Now, Ronald Reagan took us from the billions to the trillions in debt. George Herbert Walker Bush, which happens to be a president I think was a very good man, took us even higher. And W made it even worse. And here's Trump again doing it again. The difference is that now we don't have a lot of room left. We have $21+ trillion of debt with only a $19+ trillion GDP. We're running out of room. And this is the time, after fully recovering from the financial crisis, which some people seem to have forgotten about, where we're losing 800,000 jobs a month. Now that we've recovered, it was the time to mend fences and start finding ways to stabilize our debt. But instead, we just ripped it again. But the problem is that that notion and the feeling that people are getting this year is going to evaporate next year. Next year, the temporary tax cuts for the working class start going away again. So their taxes are going to increase from this year. And in 2019, after the midterm elections, this is how they set it up. 3 million people or so are going to lose health insurance in America. And on top of that, the people that still have health insurance, people 50 to 64, are going to have a premium increase of $1,500. And this is according to the AARP. Okay, so this claim that Trump's a genius is absolutely false. Okay, he's basically pouring fuel on the fire. But again, it creates that environment where his lies become easy to accept and we become complacent. Some people are saying, hey, you know what, I don't like him, what he's doing is wrong, but he's good for the economy. He's not good for the economy. He's somebody that's selling our future for the present. But the reason why we should worry and we should try to communicate and not give up on Trump supporters is because we have to continue to inform them that what he's doing is wrong. Trump is undermining the rule of law. Before Trump came into office, the average American, especially Republicans, trusted the FBI. The majority of Americans and many Democrats actually truly believe that the FBI was politically biased against Trump. That's just not true. That's not true. The FBI director was a Republican. The new FBI director is a Republican. The Department of Justice is run by a Republican. The Deputy Attorney General was a lifelong Republican. Maybe they didn't like Trump, but they didn't like Hillary either. Ultimately, that wasn't a consideration. Okay, the FBI did a lot of things that maybe we don't agree with, but in the end, they did not sway their political bias into the investigation. But look at it this way. The danger here, and the reason that it's a concern, look, if somebody goes from hating a candidate like Hillary Clinton, that's fine, right? It doesn't really destroy our country. But when you make the leap of not trusting an individual to not trusting the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that's a problem. Then the Department of Justice conducted an Inspector General review of the FBI, and instead of saying, okay, well, hey, I still don't like Hillary, but apparently, like Benghazi and like Whitewater and all these other things, there's nothing there, or at least nothing that we can prosecute her on. Doesn't mean you have to like her. There's no need for that. But instead of doing that, they said, well, I don't trust the FBI, and since the Department of Justice said that the FBI had no political bias, well, we don't trust them either. So the danger is here that Trump is consolidating power by causing people not to trust anyone. So they say things like the swamp doesn't want to get drained. Basically, we've given up our faith in our institutions, and now we're even attacking our intelligence community and the ability to get FISA warrants and other things. And all of this is just designed to protect Trump. And it's doing it at the expense of our institutions of law. And it doesn't get any better. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse. By not calling Trump on his lies, we're creating the space for the cancerous lies that he's professing to grow. And that's why we can't give up on Trump supporters, and we can't give up and stop calling him on his lies, because they're just going to keep getting worse. America is no longer, but the United States of America is no longer considered a full democracy. That's incredible. But the Economist Intelligence Unit that does this analysis every year, this is the second year in a row where we're considered a troubled democracy. And why is that? You can't blame them for making that conclusion. When we stop trusting each other to the extent that we have, democracy becomes a secondary concern. We distrust the other side, whichever side you're on. We distrust the other side so much that it isn't about respecting our democracy. It's about not letting them win. And that makes gerrymandering more acceptable, which is a despicable act where politicians pick their voters as opposed to the other way around. It makes voter suppression acceptable. That's a troubled democracy. And when the President of the United States steers the pot again and again, Trump may not know how to spell, but you know what? He knows how to sniff out your fears and your anger and to steer the pot and turn people against each other. Trump doesn't hold his hand out and says, hey, let's make a deal, let's try to compromise and work together. He just attacks people, attacks the Democrats. I think he's concerned about what could happen to him if the Democratic majority takes over the House and the Senate. My concern is what's happening to the country now. And it's not the economy, that's a problem. But his disastrous trade policies are going to hurt us for the long term. Trump's claim is basically that he's going to be the champion of the working American and bring jobs back to America and everything else. Well, that would be great if he could do it, but he's doing exactly the opposite for that. Productivity in America is going to get hurt by this. Competitiveness in America is going to get hurt by this. The steel tariffs in America are a prime example of how it's distorting the truth. He appeals to Christian conservatives, and this is the distraction. He does this all the time. He says there's a Christian pastor that's been held in Turkey. So I'm going to double the tariffs that we already imposed on them from 25 and 10 to 50 and 20% for steel and aluminum. And that's another lie. But they don't see that. All they say is, oh, he's standing up for Christians. He's not standing up for Christians. That pastor's been in prison for a year and a half, basically since he's been in office. Why now? Because Trump, the day before he imposed those additional tariffs or talked about it, is when Turkey said, as a free and sovereign nation, they have a right to buy their natural resources from anybody they want. And that included natural gas from Iran. That's why it's happening. And you might say, hey, you know what, I don't like Iran. Well, that's fine. I don't like Iran either. But to slap an ally with punitive tariffs is essentially waging economic warfare on them because they don't do what we want them to do. And Turkey is a critical NATO ally, geographically the most important for any kind of Middle East operations we launch. The Turkish people are having demonstrations, and they say that we are the problem. We are the enemy. And the truth is, given the policies we're assuming against them, they're right. We need to preserve NATO. We need to preserve Turkey as a member of NATO. So Trump is damaging us tremendously. Now he lies again and says that America is respected again. And his supporters cheer him on and say, hey, that's great. That's not true. In July, Trump went to London, to England, and they had tens of thousands of demonstrators protesting against his policies and against him. That's not great. It matters. How he's insulted and isolated Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada and his people. the resentment and the animosity he's creating is going to be it's going to take a long, long time to repair. Trump is a train wreck for us. And the problem is that we're not challenging him at every turn on these lies. And because we're not speaking up and making the truth available to people, well, they're just falling into believing whatever they're hearing. And the only person talking is really Trump, Hannity, and Trump's propaganda channel, and Facebook. And that's not good for us. It's not good for anybody. So, don't give up on Trump supporters. Keep telling them the truth. And don't become part of the problem by not speaking up against them.